I just wanted to check in and let you know how things have been going for me the past couple days and kind of describe to you what my reality is like. Specifically going to focus on hypomania versus I'll touch a little bit on mania, and then more focusing on hypomania versus just being a normal person who's motivated, and what that's like and what my process is like, kind of differentiating between the two, because I'm allowed to have feelings. I'm allowed to, experience normal things too, but I just have to differentiate between them because they can be very similar in my experience, or in my presentation, rather, I should say. So I'll start by saying lately I have been a little bit more caught up in my fantasy. I've been very motivated and inspired to expand on Jacqueline and Jane. I've had a little more energy to do that as well. I've also been getting a little bit less sleep. For example, I went to bed maybe around 9 o'clock last night, and then I was up at, I'd say, 5 this morning. And I had plenty of energy. I wasn't tired at all, which I usually am dragging myself out of bed to get my first cup of coffee. So that was not the case this morning. And then, I've had all of these ideas to start doing all of these new things for the brand, and I want to do them all at once. Like, I wanted to just spend all day writing business plans and drawing up contracts to, get other people on board to help me out and just really start expanding the brand. But I had to take a step back and kind of check in with myself, because that's very typical hypomanic behavior for me. Now, the difference between hypomania and mania for me mainly is in the amount of sleep I get and how caught up I get in the fantasy. So with hypomania, I do tend to fantasize a little bit more and, get more of that motivation and inspiration to do more things and expand and, just kind of be better overall. Another thing I do is I'll clean and organize and just kind of get my shit together, basically. I do the same thing when I'm manic, but it's significantly more excessive. So it's like a good day times 1,000, just totally ramped up. Very little sleep. I'll sleep maybe like an hour or two. I'll take multiple showers throughout the day. I'll clean and organize everything down to the little last details. And just basically have no concept of present reality. So I sort of just get lost in that fantasy, and I have zero regard for how my present actions in the physical world are going to affect my future self. So I had to do a little check-in with myself to make sure I wasn't going into a hypomanic state, because that can very easily turn into a manic state if it goes unchecked. So I did a meditation, I did some journaling, and I kind of just went through a little mental checklist, and I noticed, that I've been a little bit more caught up in my fantasy of Jacqueline and Jane specifically. I've also been doing a lot of manifestation and magic work, which, I do all the time, but sometimes when I'm getting more on that borderline of hypomania, I do it more and I believe it more, and it becomes a little bit more obsessive. And if things don't work out, then I start to get mad and I wonder why the magic didn't work. And, I do have a relatively healthy perspective on it, whereas if things don't work out, then, I don't blame the magic, or I don't stop believing in the magic. I just realize that it just wasn't meant to be. So I try to keep myself in check in that regard as well. So I did the meditation. I realized I've been a little bit more involved with my magic work. And so I've also been pretty grounded. I've also maintained my connection with the physical world, which is something that will typically get lost when I become hypomanic. Like I mentioned before, I just kind of start to get lost in that fantasy, and I'll lose my physical reality a little more. So I'm kind of teetering on that line a little bit. But the meditations and the journaling have really helped keep me grounded from going over the edge on that aspect. So then the other things that I mentioned before, I cleaned, I rearranged the room, but it also just helps. These things are helpful. My room had gotten a little bit messy because I had been so distracted and distraught just with other life events that had been occurring, that I kind of just let my space go to the wayside. So it got to the point where I had that shift and I just needed to get it done. So again, this is where I need to do those check-ins with myself to see where I fall on the spectrum of being normal and losing my mind a little bit. And so it really comes down to my connectedness with my physical reality. And so that's why the grounding exercises and the meditations and the journaling and these little check-ins are so important, so I can take a mental inventory of, okay, well, what is my physical behavior and how does that relate to my mental state? Because that's the driving force, is our mental state, right? Our thoughts are our driving forces. Some people, their emotions are the driving force at times, which I completely understand. But a lot of it is just trying to find where I'm at on this scale of, or on the spectrum of, insanity, I guess you could say. So through my little grounding exercise and my meditation and my journaling, I found that I am kind of borderlining that hypomania, but it can be used and utilized, this energy and these thoughts can be used and utilized for good as long as I maintain that through line to my physical reality, and as long as I do these checks with myself. Because once I start to lose that, and once I start to get consumed in the fantasy, that's when I start having problems. So I really have to make sure that I'm, maintaining that balance, which is really hard and it's a lot of work. I have to make sure that I'm taking my medications. I have to make sure that I'm going to therapy. I have to make sure that I'm doing the internal and the external work. And I have to have other people checking on me too, to make sure that, I'm not getting so distracted by the thoughts in my head, and that I'm not being consumed by my fantasy, because I think this is going to be a really great thing and I think it has a lot of potential, but if I get lost in that, then I'm going to lose it and it's not going to work out for me. So, in summary, I'm slightly hypomanic, but it's being managed with a lot of effort and meditations and journaling and therapy and grounding exercises so that it can be just a normal person who's motivated and inspired and who's not getting so caught up in the fantasy, because fantasy is not necessarily a bad thing. It's creative, it's inspiring. And I think that's a good thing to have. It's just getting lost in it can cause problems because the bills still need to get paid and the kids still need to get fed. So you have to make sure that you're grounded and that your physical space is still attached. And so, like I've said a million times, keeping yourself in check and doing those reality checks and doing the meditations and just working with your care team, working with my care team to make sure I don't lose myself so that I can grow myself and be the best version of myself that I can be for myself and for my kids and for my family and for you guys, so that this can become the big, beautiful thing that I know it has the potential to be. And so I want to take this moment to thank all of you for watching and listening and supporting me through this journey, because it really means a lot. And without you, none of this would be possible. So thank you.